Interruption. The adjournment debate was chosen earlier and won by the honourable member from Cape Breton Nova. The motion therefore be resolved that the House of Assembly recognize the vital importance of youth programs and after-school initiatives such as the Whitney Peer Youth Club and the Bay St. Lawrence Community Centre, recent recipients of funding through the Lighthouse Grant Program. The Chair will now recognize the honourable member from Cape Breton Nova.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's an honour to rise today to speak on behalf of our government regarding the Lighthouse funding program. The new Lighthouse program is an example of a promise kept by this government. It's another way that this government is making life better for Nova Scotian families by helping community groups provide recreational, educational, cultural, and life skills programs for Nova Scotia youth. On February 12, 2010, Justice Minister Ross Landry announced that 15 organizations involved in community recreation activities would each receive $12,000 from the province's Lighthouses program for a total of $180,000. Mr. Speaker, the grants are spread out across Nova Scotia from Yarmouth to the beautiful Cape Breton Island. An additional $180,000 will be awarded again next year in 2011. Lighthouses is a community-oriented crime prevention initiative. The program helps community organizations to create healthy and safe communities by developing, delivering, and maintaining effective recreational, educational, culture, life skills, and after-school programming for youth. Sustainable partnerships among youth, police, government officials, and the community are essential to healthy communities. Communities and individuals must support those who are at risk of being involved in crime in ways that reduce the likelihood of reoffending. Lighthouses is an initiative intended to support this objective. Lighthouses programs focus on youth at risk, community engagement, and collaboration, and is intended to assist communities by supporting an after-hour recreation, educational, and pro-social programs. Mr. Speaker, we will all know the importance of preventing crime before it happens, Mr. Speaker. The amount of money that we spend as a society on young people today, Mr. Speaker, invested in them today will go a long way in the future of this province, Mr. Speaker. If the young people today are the future of this province, by investing this type of money towards youth programming, Mr. Speaker, you know, so we don't have those young people incarcerated, because the price of incarceration and those types of things on society today, Mr. Speaker. And in my former life, Mr. Speaker, before I got into politics, as the executive director of the Whitney Peer Youth Club, I know firsthand what it means, Mr. Speaker, when money is invested in youth. I hear from Mr. Speaker, I've seen what money does, and you know, that's why these grants are going to organizations with proven track records, organizations who can help divert youth at risk from potential to offend. The Lighthouse programs offer financial assistance to community groups that provide recreational, educational, culture, and the most important, life skills programs for youth across the province of Nova Scotia. This program is modified after Manitoba's successful program, which 93% of the youth canvass said the program provided a safe environment and increased their self-esteem. And Mr. Speaker, this is what money given to youth does. It provides a safe environment for them to go and be with their peers and discuss matters and go over things which are going to affect their lives in a safe, supervised environment. This is where this money is going, Mr. Speaker. Communities are taking proactive and preventative approach with after-school programs, and we are supporting them in this effort. One of the groups is the Bay St. Lawrence Community Centre, Mr. Speaker, in Cape Breton, who received funding for the seniors' youth time banking. This is a intergenerational program where seniors and youth work together and is very important to this community, Mr. Speaker. The center opened in 1999 and promotes physical, mental, and social well-being in the Bay St. Lawrence and surrounding areas. They provide services for youth that include teen activities such as role modeling through participatory approach activities, peer tutoring. Mr. Speaker, this program has been chosen as the Municipal Youth Volunteers of the Year Award and is quite an accomplishment for the centers. Mr. Speaker, they also provide senior youth mentoring programs and programming for children that include preschool programs, soccer, camping, boxing club training, minor baseball, and book bag programs. The Bay St. Lawrence Community Centre is an essential part of their community and want to make sure that this host recognizes all of the hard work and what a difference they have made in Northern Cape Breton, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and very well know the member from Victoria the Lakes would know firsthand the work done by Amy McKinnon and that group up there. Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege many years ago to go up there back in the 90s and work with the former group that was in charge there to help them open this center. It was an honor for me to do that and still work closely with them today. The Bay St. Lawrence Center is an essential part of that community. And by providing those youth programming to that community, and I know the former government has been in support of that center, and I know the member from Victoria Lakes has, and I commend him on that, because that's money well spent, Mr. Speaker. That's money very well spent. When I first went up there many years ago, Mr. Speaker, the community was dealing with problems of drug abuse, dealing with problems of youth out of control. But by investing this money in that community, Mr. Speaker, we have done things to help those young people so they will not make those choices, Mr. Speaker. They will go down to choices in life that we all want them to be, and as good, productive citizens of society. Mr. Speaker, we know that we cannot eliminate crime, but we can spend money preventing it and starting investing in kids so that they don't choose a life of crime. Those positive opportunities like these activities, they will find role models and activities that build their self-esteem and help them make the right choices, Mr. Speaker. As I stand in my place in the legislature today, I think of role models that I had as a young fella, my ball coaches, my hockey coaches, and those people. And think of those people that spent time with me after school in intramural programs in Holy Redeemer Gym. A lot of time, Mr. Speaker. A lot of time, and look where I'm at today because of that, Mr. Speaker.
Your boxing coach.
And Mr. Speaker, I know well, that time was invested in me, and I remember one of my friends telling me, when you were a young fella, Gordy, if they had the diagnosis of ADD or ADHD and the retinal, that you would have had to put in your arm intravenously between the classes because you were so hyper. And Mr. Speaker, I can still think back of that mentor that I had. And I think about all the time that he spent on that ball field with us kids, and all the time that we travel Cape Breton as Shetty Camp playing junior ball, and Lewisburg, and all through the community playing fastball. And that little time that he spent in that community in our neighborhood in Whitney Pier, and out of that became one of the better ball teams ever in that little community. And that was just a bunch of kids that had time spent to them by somebody that cared, Mr. Speaker. We want to spend taxpayers' dollars wisely, Mr. Speaker, and where they're absolutely necessary, Mr. Speaker. The Lighthouse program was a commitment that this government made in 2009 election and was achieved 1 year ahead of schedule because we recognize the importance of providing youth with the preventative services that they require. We must work with our partners and communities across Nova Scotia to help direct young people in positive activities and thus reduce the potential of them starting a life in criminal activity. We heard a lot about that program that our Premier and party made a commitment to, Nova Scotians, that we would be proactive in helping to reach out to youth, Mr. Speaker. The Department of Justice has given out grants to community organizations before, but this program has spread over more organizations than the previous one. In some cases, the 12,000 covers the whole program. In others, we are supplementing with other partners so the program can be provided. Mr. Speaker, before I conclude, I would like to congratulate all of the 15 groups who received the Lighthouse funding and recognize the hard work that they do in our communities each and every day. Mr. Speaker, before I sit down, I will mention the Whitney Pier Youth Club one more time and the work by the Executive Director of Chester Borden. Mark Gardner has been there. I hired Mark in 1995. He's been there for over 15 years working with young people. And Jenny, they've been there for a long time, and they still have a lot of work that they're doing, and the youth center is being successful. And I hope now, you know, that the Bay St. Lawrence Community Center can also follow in the tracks of the Whitney Pier Youth Club. But before I sit down, I'll say one thing that I've learned a long time ago. And that thing that I learned is that youth don't care what you know as long as they know that you care. Thank you.
The honourable member from Halifax, Clayton Park.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I was pleased to stay late this evening and join the late debate to discuss this Lighthouse Grants program, which I must say, Mr. Speaker, I had not been aware of as the MLA in Clayton Park until I saw it in the budget address the other day. And in the budget address, it actually refers to the program. There's only a short mention, but it says young people need positive role models and alternatives to risky behavior. I agree with that. And it says that there will be a commitment of $240,000 annually in after-school Lighthouse programs. And that's to provide recreational, cultural, and life skills programming for youth. So when I saw that this had been put on the agenda for tonight's late debate, I was happy to do some background reading and to participate today. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I noticed that this program is coming through the Department of Justice, and the announcements that I had found reference to were from the current Minister of Justice. And I understand that the earlier Nunn Commission had made reference to the fact that we are missing this component in so many communities where there are no programs for young people, and they are left to their own devices and you know, that critical time they have after school, and missing a lot of opportunities to learn, to be mentored, to develop skills and even find out all their strengths. So I think it is a very important thing that there is some program available now, and I see that it's by a grant system and that our community groups can apply. So I will definitely make sure that that is well communicated, and I hope that other members of the House will do just the same through their newsletters or websites or any way we can, because we all have community groups that are working. Now, one of my concerns might be that a lot of the areas where we have children at risk, we may not have good, well-developed community groups, and I hope that that will be looked at when you see where all the applications are coming from, because I know if we look at PTAs, for example, parent-teacher groups and parent groups within schools, we find that a lot of the neighborhood schools, and for example in Clayton Park, have well-developed, strong PTAs that get going, apply for grants, have good programs, you know, upgrade their schools, and then you go to another area that might have nobody that's willing to serve, or the parents don't have the capacity. We often talk about community capacity, and they aren't engaged. They're busy fighting poverty. They're busy being, you know, having to work 2 or 3 jobs just to look after their kids. I mean, there are good reasons why they're not volunteering at the school, but I just say that we should look and see that all neighborhoods have an opportunity to access this kind of funding, and it may actually spawn some new groups coming into play that could provide this service. I was pleased to see when I looked at some of the groups that are receiving funding that among them was one of the women's centres, and I'm glad to see the member for Antigonish is here, because I note that the Antigonish Women's Centre is one of the ones that did receive a grant, and I must say that I have had the opportunity to meet Lucille Harper on a number of occasions, both here in Halifax when she's come to speak at legislative committees, and in Antigonish when I visited to find out what more we could be doing for women and for girls in our communities. And certainly the Antigonish Women's Centre is very astute, and I think they must have seen the opportunity here of helping more people, because they do an at-risk program for girls who come in after school to the centre, and they've been doing that for a number of years. The schools themselves recommend and suggest who might come, and they're invited, and you know, it's really helped to probably keep a lot of girls you know, on the straight and narrow, if you like, because they realize somebody cares, as the minister or the member from Whitney Pier has said, from Cape Breton Nova, and you know, knowing that somebody cares and having somebody to talk to can make all the difference, and then finding ways where they can channel their energies into something positive, which is what often happens when groups get together, whether they're cleaning up their neighborhood or taking on new projects. So we really do appreciate that. I'm just a little concerned that the emphasis is all on crime prevention, because I can tell you there's not a community in this entire province that couldn't use a good after-school program. And, you know, in my neighborhood, a lot of the children may be better off financially, but they may be going home to houses that have no parent at home. And these are quite young children, and even when they're, you know, old enough to be there, say they're 12 years old, which is old enough to go home, you're still not going to be productively engaged if you don't have something to kind of occupy your time. And we talk so much about health and about activity levels for our young people, you know, and as the health critic, I'm very concerned at what we can do that would increase recreational opportunities. So again, through a program like this, we're not just addressing children at risk and crime prevention. We have an opportunity to do so much more in terms of recreation, fitness, and education and health. You know, I think that offering mentors and positive role models is really important for young people, and I see a need for it in every corner of my community, and I'm sure that other members who are nodding their heads feel the same way, that whether you're a rural community, a town, or a city, there are different pressures on the young people, and there's an awful lot that I think would benefit and would really welcome this. So I know the program seems a little small. If it's $240,000 this year, which is more than the member from Cape Breton Nova mentioned. I don't know that he'd seen that in the budget address. But at the same time, we're glad to see so many organizations have accessed it. One of them in HRM is the African Diaspora Association. I'll have to say that one again, but I know people who are in diaspora, thank you, which means moving all around the world. We certainly have people from that organization that I know in Clayton Park, and they've been very active in terms of providing weekend programs, so I doubt very much if that's an after school, but at any rate, we do support that, and I'm glad to see it in place, but I hope that the minister will, as they're looking at it as a crime prevention committee that's making the grants and actually reviewing the grant applications, I hope that they will be reviewing that with an eye to overall health and just the well-being of young people in this province, because this is a program that's needed in every community, as I said. And it surprises me in some of the elementary schools how early the children are actually dismissed in the afternoon. At Rockingham School, they're dismissed by 2:30 in the afternoon, all the children, and the younger ones are out at 2 o'clock. The ones in primary 1 and 2. And I've always wondered, there's two questions, Mr. Speaker. One is, why do we think that children in primary 1 and 2 get out half an hour earlier than the other children? It doesn't work well for families, I can tell you that, as a mother who had to go through that period when you had one in both levels. But at the same time, it's so early to have them out in and with babysitters or with after-school care. And I do feel that we should be looking at making better use of our school day. And I realize, Mr. Speaker, you're a former teacher, so you may have a different take on that, but as a mother, I think that's an important thing, that we consider maximizing the school day and integrating some of these programs right into the schools, which, you know, even with volunteers, that's quite a possibility, I think, as we go forward. And again, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how the minister has communicated this program far and wide, because I know that many of the members were not aware of it. I thought perhaps the Lighthouse program meant that it was an established program, something like the Boys and Girls Club, or you know, something that had a template about what you would do if you were adopting the Lighthouse program. This is what you would do. On reading the material to speak tonight, I see that it's very much up to the community to propose different programs that they think would fit the criteria. So really, the Lighthouse program is just the name that Nova Scotia's adopted for a community-based grant system, which will respond to whatever needs are raised that they feel meet to the crime prevention, helping youth at risk criteria. So what I'd like to see is that the criteria include beyond just immediate concerns about crime, and help to give the skills and the development that young people need to thrive. And we know we have literacy problems. I think reading was mentioned by the previous member, and you know, we're in a province that has some serious literacy issues, and we have a labor crunch coming up where we're going to have a lot more jobs than we have people to fill them, but at the same time we're going to have people that would like to work but don't have the basic skills, because they're not well enough prepared with literacy skills. So I'd love to see something that worked on reading and literacy with young people, because you can instill in even the the youngest children a real love of reading, and you know, if they enjoy reading, they're going to be successful in a lot of their other studies. So even if it's like reading groups and book clubs, I think that has a lot of value for all of us. And I know CBC and others do the Young Readers series that you can hear young people come in and talk about books, but we need to reach a lot more children than we are right now. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to mention something about the Whitney Pier Youth Club, and I know that the member from Cape Breton Nova has been very involved in that in his earlier career, but I was told, and I noticed in the material, that it was actually founded in 1994, and I was told that our previous Premier, Russell McClellan, had actually dedicated his pension, his federal pension, to, perhaps it was through your initiative of asking him. However, when he was Premier of this province and a sitting member of the House, he redirected his pension. Yes, and that's the one we're talking about. Yeah, exactly, Mr. the honourable member. Yes, I was going to use your name, and I won't do that. But I thought it was really important that we note that, you know, somebody from our own, one of our own colleagues and somebody from this House had seen the importance of the youth program. It was fledgling at the time, and he dedicated his federal pension during the time he was sitting in the House to that club. And I think that that's something that we should all acknowledge and appreciate. Mr. Speaker, if I have just a few seconds to wrap up. Again, I think we'll be very interested to see this program grow and to hear more of the success stories as we go along. And I think now that members of the House have a little bit more information on it, I hope that we all do our best to publicize it and to get more organizations to apply, because I think we'll hear a lot of good coming out of these groups, and I hope to hear more of it in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. The honourable member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it gives me great honour to be able to take part in this debate today. And first, I want to thank the member from Cape Breton Nova for bringing this forward, because I really believe this is a very important issue. And I want to congratulate the member from Cape Breton Nova, because he was the director of the Whitney Pier Youth Group. And in Whitney Pier, when you talk about the youth and you talk about the centre, there's two names that come up: the member from Cape Breton Nova and also Chester Borden. And they have a motto at the youth centre in Whitney Pier, and the motto is, "Youth don't care what you know till they know you care." It's everywhere when you go there. And that member is a big part of why that organization has been so successful. So for us to be here today, Mr. Speaker, and talking about a program that does so much for youth, it is so important to know how members of this House have had an impact. The member from Victoria the Lakes, he has been very active with them in the Bay St. Lawrence and making sure that that group had the funding and were able to get together. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, that member has had 2 different justice ministers down to that centre so that people in that community would know how much people cared about the challenges that they face. So we have members here, and it doesn't matter what party they're from. When we talk about youth, we're talking about the most valuable resource that this province has. And we're here together to make sure that we do what is right for the youth. And programs like this are a good start. And a program like this is something that we have to remember is important, because it has an effect. And you don't have to be in an isolated community for you to have problems. In my own area of Cape Breton West, we had some challenges in Louisbourg, where there were some youths gathering, and there was some graffiti being done, and there were some buildings and property being destroyed. And the community got together. They came together, and they thought, what do we do? How do we fix this? And it was really something to see, because for once, everybody had one thing in mind. They had a focus, and the focus was doing what was best for the children of their community. So we've seen the community come together. We've seen the fire department step up and say, look, we have extra space in the basement of our building. We can use that for a youth center. We've seen the community say, well, we can donate different things to this center so the kids have something to do, to occupy their time. We've seen parents and children and grandparents volunteering their time to become leaders, to make sure that there was some direction given to these young people. But the other unique thing that happened, the other thing that was so unique about this in my mind, was the youth themselves stepped up and said, we need your help, but we don't expect you to do it alone. And they took on a leadership role too. They elected a president from amongst their group, and they took some leadership in the community. They went out and organized cleanups in the community. They went out and helped make sure that the damage had been done by whomever was fixed. And these are the young people who are the leaders for tomorrow. We have people who stood up to the plate. I think of Melinda Power, an activist in the community, a parent who's seen what was going on, was concerned about what was going on, and she said, we have to make a difference. And she approached everybody and anybody to see if she could get help. Gerald Shepherd, who was a member of the CBRM police force, he was a community officer. He was there and gave his time. Gerald would come to that center on his days off to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that the kids there had some activity and some leadership. They were there to make sure that a difference was made. And the group calls themselves Louisburg Youth in Motion. And I can tell you that it is something that the whole community is proud of. And during the winter, when you land there, you can go in and you'll see them playing shuffleboard or pool or watching a movie or organizing some kind of an event, whether it be a food drive or cleanup or something at Christmas. So it is important. It is important for us to have programs such as the Lighthouse program. A program, I might add, Mr. Speaker, that was very much similar to a program that had been there in place by the former government, and that was a program that we took a great deal of pride in, made sure that the funding was in place. And it doesn't matter what government put these programs in place. What matters is the kids are first. When we talk about what do we do with our children, how do we make them part of our communities, I look at things and groups like Sea Cadets. We have a very active Sea Cadet group in Donkin. We have an active Sea Cadet group in Marion Bridge. And why are they successful? They're successful because of the leadership that's provided by the people of the community, by those who care what happened to their children. And they're successful because when the children are there, the children are made to feel that they are important and that they are somebody, and they are important. They are the most important resource that we have in this province. So Sea Cadets has made a difference because not all communities can have a youth center, but you have to have some kind of a program to offer young people. In Port Morion in 2008, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Scotia movement in Canada. That's where it started. And why did it start in Port Morion? Because the people who were living there, in those days it was a mining community, and they knew they had to have something for their children to do. So what did they do? They looked around and they found these things coming from their own heritage, knowing that Lord Baden-Powell had started the movement in London. And they went and they brought it to Cape Breton, they brought it to Canada, and they made it something so that young people, the future, would have a place to go and a role model to follow. And then, of course, there's groups like the 4-H. Again, because you cannot have a youth center in every group. But we have in our community, in a place called Grand Myra, the longest continuously running 4-H club in Canada. And that group have people there that do public speaking, they do husbandry of animals, they do cooking, they do foods, they do all kinds of things. But what is important about that, Mr. Speaker, is that they are together and they're learning about respect, they're learning about things that are important, they're putting their energy into doing something that is valuable for them and valuable for their community and gives them life skills that they'll carry on with them forever. My daughter and all my children and my wife were all members of 4-H. And it was a program. It didn't matter if you lived in the city or the country. It didn't matter if you could bake or cook. Or it didn't matter if you could shear sheep or if you could walk a horse. There was always a place for you, and there was always a role. But in all of these ventures, and it didn't make any difference which venture it was, the thing that was most important was the leaders who volunteered their time. So for our youth to be successful, there's a combination of things that I think we have to look at as a community. We have to look at engagement of the youth. We have to look at leadership by the community. And we have to look at programs like the Lighthouse program to help provide funding. Because, Mr. Speaker, there is no better investment that we can make in our province than that helps the children of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. The time allocated for late debate has now expired. I'd like to thank all the honour members for having taken part in tonight's late debate. The motion for adjournment was made earlier. The House will now rise to sit again tomorrow at 12 noon.